Alright guys, we've just had a bonkers weekend of Championship football and we're going straight into some midweek fixtures as well. Loads to talk through in today's video. The focus is going to be on the games coming up in midweek, but we're also going to be touching on the games that happened over the weekend over the course of this video. So along with your score predictions, do get your thoughts on the weekend's action down below. And without any further ado, let's jump in. And we're starting the midweek fixtures out with a cracker at St Andrews between Birmingham and Blackburn. What a game of significance in the bottom half of the Championship, and with John Eustace returning to St Andrews as well. Suddenly this fixture for Birmingham I think looks a lot harder. Rovers got that instant reaction to the dismissal of John Dole-Thomason with a cracking result against Stoke City, and now with Eustace at the helm, all of a sudden I think the scales tilt maybe in Blackburn's favour going into this fixture. Obviously it was a disappointing result for Blues over the weekend. They lost against Sheffield Wednesday. Did think they got in some very good areas in that first half, but ultimately were made to pay for missing some of those chances, and second half couldn't really get things going for them. I do fancy both sides to create a few chances in this one. I'd imagine it would be fairly open, even when Blackburn have been on that bad run of form at times. They have still been hitting the back of the net with relative consistency. But score prediction here, I can't help but feel like Eustace may get one over on his former employers. I'm going to go 2-1 Blackburn there, which really would put Birmingham in it. Next up we go to the King Power for Leicester up against Sheffield Wednesday. Leicester did make it 3 wins on the bounce over the weekend with that triumph over Watford. Now they've scored 10 goals in their last 3 matches. I think most would fancy their chances in this game, although it has to be said, Sheffield Wednesday with a massive result themselves over the weekend. Just when you go and write someone off in that relegation picture, they come in with a result like that. Ugbo causing absolute havoc in the final third. I thought Pavey looked really effective as well, and suddenly there's that glimmer of a hope that Wednesday have back. A fantastic reaction on the back of that Huddersfield game last time out. With that being said, going away to the King Power is a very daunting task, and not many Championship sides have taken from Leicester at home this season. It does have to be said, in the reverse fixture earlier in the campaign, you could argue that Leicester maybe were a little bit complacent coming into that fixture. It ended as a 1-1 draw, and the Foxes were by no means at their best in that game, and if they're gonna take this fixture lightly again, then Wednesday could snatch something. With that being said, I think the Foxes are just so good at home. I'm going to go 3-0 in this game. Next up we go to Norwich up against Watford. Can either of the playoff challengers get the better of each other in this fixture? Norwich over the weekend against QPR did well in that second half to get back into a leading position, but I think will have ultimately been a bit disappointed not to have held out for all 3 points in that game. Going up against the Watford side, who obviously lost against Leicester, gave it a decent go in that game, maybe just lacking that little bit of quality to ultimately make the difference. But Emmanuel Dennis now off the mark for them for the season, which can only be a good thing. And honestly, I don't think there'll be that much in this game either. Norwich have been pretty consistent at Carrow Road of late. They're unbeaten in their last 7 home matches. But with that being said, Watford have been pretty good value for money on the road as well. They can match Norwich's record. They're unbeaten in their last 7 away matches. So with all that being said, I wouldn't be totally surprised if this heads towards a draw. 1-1, I'm saying, between these two. After that we go to Rotherham up against Hull. Don't think many people were expecting the Millers to take anything from their game over the weekend against Leeds, especially after Patrick Bamford gave the home side the lead after just 10 minutes. I think that Rotherham fans expected to be in for a bit of a long afternoon. With that being said, I do think there's a decent chance they could get something from this game, especially if Hull play to the sort of standards that they were over the weekend. A really under-par performance from Liam Rossinia's men, arguably the worst of the season so far, given how many creative players they had on the pitch against Swansea. Really disappointing considering the lack of tempo and threat they ultimately carried in that game. Obviously lost it 1-0 in the end and lost a bit of ground in the overall playoff race as well. This one very much depends on which version of Hull turns up and whether Rossinia can get an instant reaction out of his players. Honestly, I think I'm veering towards a draw on this one as well. Score prediction here, going to go for a 1-1er. Next up we go to Swansea up against Leeds. A much needed result for Swansea over the weekend. For as bad as Hull were in that game, got to give a lot of credit to Swansea. I wasn't giving them much of a chance going into that game, but Luke Williams really got a tune out of his squad in that game, played some really nice football and ultimately capitalised on that as well. Things don't get easy for them in this game, returning to the Liberty against the Leeds side who have now won 6 games on the bounce. It was a pretty convincing win for them, I think it's fair to say, over the weekend against Rotherham, 3-0 in the end. While away form overall has been a little bit patchy for Leeds this season, they have won back-to-back games on the road now, winning their last 2. So while we saw a lot of improvements from Swansea over the weekend, and these midweek fixtures can be very unpredictable, I think I am just edging it towards Leeds in this one. Score prediction here, going to go 2-1 to Daniel Farke's men. Next up we go to Bristol City up against Southampton. An absolutely huge result for Bristol City over the weekend. Their first win since Boxing Day in the league. Thought that fatigue might have played a part in that game for Bristol City, given they'd been in action in the FA Cup over midweek, but didn't appear to be the case in the end. 2 quick-fire goals from them in the first half and then a really well-regimented second half performance to see the game out. This one will be really tricky against the Southampton side, who will look to hold the ball off them. Southampton themselves involved in an absolute cracker of an 8-goal thriller over the weekend against Huddersfield. Looked like Huddersfield had that one with a 2-goal lead. Joe Rothwell gets them back into it before Huddersfield take the lead again, but Southampton just have too much firepower in their ranks. Now means it's 22 games unbeaten for Russell Martin's men. They've matched the record that was set by Burnley last season in terms of that 22-game unbeaten streak, and now they've got the chance to go ahead and surpass that. I'd imagine Bristol City would take a lot of confidence from that result over Middlesbrough. With that being said, I think it is still Southampton who I've got to give the edge to. That unbeaten streak is an absolute joke. Score prediction here, I'm going to go 2-1 to the Saints. Next up to the Hawthorns for West Brom up against Cardiff. West Brom having led twice in their game over the weekend against Ipswich, probably a little bit disappointed they didn't hold out for all 3 points, but given the overall picture, West Brom's general away form this season, I think that's a decent point in the grand scheme of things. Obviously the bad news coming out of that one for the Baggies was another injury to Daryl DK. The guy just cannot catch a break right now, can he? Going up against this Cardiff side right now, I would expect the Baggies to be the favourites and probably follow through with that on this sort of game. Cardiff, I was a little bit disappointed by what they served up over the weekend against North End. Preston, who have been very patchy recently, I thought we had it relatively easy in the end actually, which was disappointing from a Cardiff perspective. West Brom have won 10 of their 15 home matches this season. I reckon they'll get the better of Cardiff in this one. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 2-0 West Brom there. Next up we go to Huddersfield up against Sunderland. 2 sides involved in bonkers games over the weekend. Huddersfield losing out to Southampton in the end, but I do think they can take a lot of pride from that performance, especially from an attacking point of view and daring to have a go at them. I don't think you get that sort of performance under Darren Moore, I think it's fair to say. And do you know what? I'd expect more of the same from Huddersfield in this game, really to go at Sunderland, and in that case I do see this one being fairly open. Sunderland, to be fair to them, did get a good result over the weekend against Plymouth in a game where I thought could have been a potential banana skin for them at home. Some cracking goals scored though in that game, it has to be said. I do fancy more to be scored in this one. Why not? I'll go for a 4-goal thriller. 2-2 draw I'm saying between these two. Next up we then head to Plymouth up against Coventry. Plymouth looking to bounce back from a defeat over the weekend against Sunderland. Got themselves into a really good position in that game in the first half, but second half couldn't live up to those same standards. Maybe a case of fatigue playing into the Plymouth legs in that second half, because it did seem to be quite the slump compared to their first half performance. And this game won't be easy either against a Coventry side who did pick up a good result over the weekend. 2-1 against Millwall, turning that game around, and I thought Millwall actually made it quite difficult for Coventry. Ultimately though, it was Haji Wright who made the difference with a brace. It now means it's 15 goal contributions for Haji Wright this season. Has been in a good bit of form recently. I think that Coventry really capitalised on a lot of the other sides around them this weekend dropping points. This is another opportunity to go ahead and continue the good run, although it is worth pointing out that Plymouth are unbeaten in their last 8 home matches. With that being said, I think that Coventry may edge this one. Score prediction here, going to go 2-1 Cov on the road. Next then to Deepdale for Preston up against Middlesbrough. Now, it was a great result for North End over the weekend. 2-0 against Cardiff now means it's just one defeat from our last 5 matches. Emil Rees back within the goals was fantastic to see. Mads pulling the strings from that attacking midfield position, and suddenly out of nowhere the playoffs seem to be a possibility again after the dreadful run of form that North End have experienced over these past few months. We seem to have turned the corner in the past few weeks, to be fair to us, and in saying that as well, I'd say this is a relatively decent time to be playing Middlesbrough. They've not got much form about them right now. It was a defeat over the weekend against Bristol City. We did flag up coming into that game how much of an issue home form actually has been for Michael Carrick's men this season. Generally speaking, they have been better value for money on the road, and so I am a little bit more wary of that. Also the fact as well, thinking back to the reverse fixture earlier in the season, Middlesbrough absolutely played us off the park that day, and I know that a lot has changed since then with the context of both sides, but that's still in the back of my mind as well. The form book right now does favour North then, but I've got a gut feeling Bristol get a point from this one. Score prediction here, going to go for a 1-1 draw. Arguably the biggest game we've got going on this weekend in the Championship sees Stoke going up against QPR. A win for QPR in this game would see them going above the relegation zone and dropping Stoke in there. They would move above Stoke on goal difference if they get the better of them in this game. And do you know what? I think a lot of people may be fancying a QPR win for this game. Certainly looking at the form book, QPR now unbeaten in their last 4 matches. They got back into it in that second half against Norwich after it looked like they'd thrown things away. Frey with his first goal for the club, really nice movement for that goal, gets across his man and gets a touch on the ball to put it into the far post. And do you know what? QPR really have an opportunity here, especially if they take a lead early on against Stoke, where that home ground is just going to become absolutely toxic. We saw it in the away end for Stoke against Blackburn. Chance of you're not fit to wear the shirt and things like that. And just thinking of how bad Stoke have been, especially at home at times this season, Cifuentes is going to be well aware of that, and I think that QPR need to play into those sorts of emotions. For Stoke, it really was a disastrous result against a fellow out-of-form side in Blackburn, albeit Blackburn probably got that new manager bounce from that game. It sort of summed things up, really. Daniel Johnson, who's got a tremendous penalty record, it has to be said, stepping up for that penalty and not converting it in the second half. A loss for Stoke here really drops them in it in terms of the probabilities for relegation, really leaps up if they lose this game. But I've got a feeling QPR get the job done here. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 2-1 QPR on the road. And then to finish things off at the Den for Millwall up against Ipswich. It was a draw for Ipswich over the weekend, 2-2 against West Brom. Amari Hutchinson rescuing a point for the Tractor Boys in that game. Still in this slump, I think it's fair to say, for Ipswich in terms of the results recently. Well, there haven't been that many losses over this period. There has been a lot of draws of late. Millwall themselves are struggling to find much form. They've lost 4 of their last 5 matches. Did think they got maybe a little bit unfortunate against Coventry. They got themselves into a really good position in that game, and I thought started out actually very well, but conceded a penalty and then a bit of an error from Sarkic, who I think should save that second goal, is ultimately how they lose this one. Points wise, neither team is in sparkling form right now, and I wouldn't be completely surprised if this game ended level. Score prediction here, I'm going to go for a 1-1 between these two. But guys, there you have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to get all your score predictions in the comments down below. Should be some very fun matches coming up in midweek. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.